Hi, I'm Emilia.
And I'm Yvonne. Together, we wrote a book on female friendships, and boy, do we have questions.
We're here to continue the conversation and help women to navigate, cultivate, and celebrate female friendships.
This is Girl Friendships.
And Emilia, I'm thinking that I think we've said most of what we want to say about girl friendships, If our audience wants to hear more, they could read the book.
Yeah.
And, have these kind of discussions with their own friends. But we have two topics we want to talk about. Well, maybe just one for this episode. And that's around when we start drifting away from our friendships. So we're calling this episode The Drift.
Yeah.
What do you think a drift means to you? Do you have anybody you're drifting away? Sounds like I'm the friendly ghost. I'm just
very friendly ghost. But it's funny. I find most of my friendships right now are drifting back together versus drifting away. So, I can speak to a drift that happened
towards versus a drift away from.
Yeah. So kind of coming back from like a drift that happened. Like there's one specifically that comes to mind with one of my friends. She had two young kids. I mean, it was the pandemic and just unintentionally, we lost touch, right? So it was one of those things where, I had a lot going on and she had a lot going on. And also just, I don't know if it was just the time and you also sort of assume to yourself that, if someone's not reaching out to me, it's because they don't want to hang out or they don't want to chat. So then just sort of noticing that the person's drifting and then sort of putting some meaning on it.
Well, you remember in the episode where we talked about life changes, right? And then sometimes due to life changes, whether you're involved in any relationship or you have children or you have a parent now you have to take care of, there could be all kind of things that makes us a little bit busier. Mm-hmm. So we don't have as much bandwidth to be there for our friends the way we were in the past. And sometimes we don't even have the time to go reach out to the friend and say, hey, you're important, but I'm consumed with whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I think in those cases, we may assume the person doesn't want to be in our lives anymore. Mm-hmm. And we just, minimize contact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I call that some kind of a drift because it's not like you had a fight, there was any big breakup. It's you drift away. So one reason for a drift could be people just got busy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're describing a situation where the people have come back. So what do you think contributes to, well, I think I just explained the drifting away. Mm-hmm. Why would you think somebody would want to come back after a period? Like, how did this coming back together happen?
So in our case, it was actually my friend had heard about the fact that I had written this book and I was going to launch it and have an event. Mm-hmm. And so she bought a ticket to the event. She said, oh my gosh, I want to celebrate. I remember my friend telling me about this a decade and a half ago that she wanted to write a book. This is huge that she's been able to do this and I want to come out for her. So she did. And so from that, it would, it sparked the conversation around, hey, we haven't been in touch. I maybe assumed that was intentional maybe on your part in some way. And then, we had this discussion and it turned out that it really wasn't intentional on either of our parts. It just kind of happened and then it just stayed that way for a time. And so for us, the catalyst was this specific event. And I was so touched by the fact that, my friend came out. And since then we've been keeping in touch a lot more regularly. We actually have plans next weekend to do some magical Christmas stuff with her kids and her family. So, it's funny how sometimes we kind of make assumptions or take things personally even.
Right.
And then it turns out just not to be a thing. And
But sometimes drift happens.
Yeah.
Right? Drift happens. Well, yeah, it could be because there are circumstances in our lives. I still think, unless you don't want to keep the friendship, but I still think it doesn't cost more than maybe 5 seconds to just send somebody an email, a text, or whatever, just to say, man, it's been a lot. I'm going through stuff, so I haven't forgotten you, but I'm going to be AWOL for a while.
yeah.
Right? Doesn't take much, but I don't know, despite our best intentions, sometimes, we neglect people. But then we're in a different space in our lives, maybe 10 years down from now, then, or whatever. And then we're thinking, oh, there's Emilia having a book launch or whatever. She and I used to be good friends. So in reflection, I'm going, oh my goodness, I haven't been in touch with her for a long time. I'm going to reach out. So maybe there would have had to have been good seeds sown in the past for the person to want to reconnect after a period
For
of
sure.
drifting apart.
For sure. I think that's probably kind of a standard across these situations. I don't think anyone sort of reaches out again if they didn't have a positive memory or if they didn't have a positive experience with the person or the friendship. I think if it was kind of lukewarm, then the person would just decide to keep that going, right? Because maybe they have other friendships that are warmer and more fun. So I think that's probably a prerequisite to bring a drift back, is that, you do have a positive association with this person, your memories of them, and, the way that your friendship was and the interactions that you had. So then you come back to it and you're keen to come back to it. Yeah.
But what about those situations? Because I'm thinking of some people who used to be in my life and they're not. And I'm thinking about people who, similar to your friend, they were very prominent in my life at one point, and then they just kind of disappeared. Despite my efforts to kind of reconnect, it felt one-sided. So I just kind of released it.
Yeah.
Only to have them reach out maybe many, many years afterwards. And like I said, in this case, there was no major disappointment with the friendship. It was just like, I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, well, I guess I'm carrying this by myself. But I had one friend re-enter my life, and we're even closer now than we were before. So even though this episode, it really is about drift, and I think we're going to talk in a little while about the drift that probably stay permanent. Just realize that in your friendships, as we've experienced in ours, people could drift away, sometimes up to a decade.
Yeah.
And then they come back again, and things end up being sweeter than they were before in those friendships. So if the drift happens and it wasn't like any major hurt and even if there's been a hurt, we can, as you say in the book, extend forgiveness, we can give grace to people. So anyways, I've talked enough. Anything else you want to say about drift before we go to the drift that are going to stay drifted?
Before we get to that. Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that the situation with that friend really, really taught me not to take things so personally. And so recently it happened where, one of my friends wasn't reaching out to me. And I could very easily just say, well, oh, she's not reaching out to me, so why am I going to reach out to her? She's not prioritizing our friendship. But I kind of don't do that anymore because of this experience with this friend, right? Where I had made wrong assumptions about why we weren't in touch. And so I reached out to her. I sent her a text, and And I said, hey, I know we've both been really busy. I just want to let you know I'm thinking of you. And I had like sent her a picture. And, and then she texted me right back and she was like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. Like, this means a lot. Like, I unexpectedly, like, we lost our dog last week and it's been really hard. And, so I think that when that experience taught me kind of not to make assumptions, then I'm more keen. Two things happened there. One, I didn't make any assumptions about why she wasn't reaching out to me or, in any way came to any negative conclusion about our friendship. That's one. And then the second thing was I might not even have time to hang out right now, but I wrote to her and I just wanted to let her know that I was thinking of her. So that's something that in the past, if I was really busy, I might not reach out to someone because then I think, oh, well, I don't have time to make plans or I don't have time for this. So why am I going to reach out? Whereas now I was like, no, I'm going to reach out even though I'm busy. I just want to let her know I'm thinking of her. And, and of course I was there for her because, so we did end up making some brunch plans and everything to kind of catch up. But those two things that happened there. Yeah.
Don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
When the person is not in communication.
Yes. And the second part of that is, even if you don't have time for, a lengthy catch up or a hangout, that it's still good to reach out to your friend if you care about someone, just to send them a text to let them know you're thinking of them. Because you don't. The truth is we don't know what's going on in anyone's life at any given point, and that could mean a lot to your friend.
Well, you're such a good person, Emilia. Like, I'm sitting there going, if in 10 years you have not reached out to me, and I hear you, those are well and good, but maybe because I'm using my yardstick, my way of communication, which is different for everybody. I know that, but I'm still going to judge you because if in 10 years... you have not reached out to me. We didn't have a fight. And you just kind of, not even like a Christmas emoji. So I'm going somewhere with this. So I make it if, there are days when, and maybe one could say I have more time, but I've always led a fairly busy life. But sometimes I have an hour and I'll sit there and I'll go through my contacts on my phone because I'm ready to delete people I've not done in touch.
Really? Okay, that's so interesting.
And then I thought, oh, there's this person. I wonder how they're doing. So I will send a text. Hi, just thinking about you. How are you doing? Right? If they don't reply, whatever, they're gone. But I because I make it intentional, if I haven't heard from somebody to at least reach out. No. They may not respond because they're out of the country. They have changed their phone numbers. There's a whole bunch of things. But until I hear that otherwise, and you don't respond, I am thinking not nice things about you. I'm not angry, but I'm thinking not nice things about you.
That's fair. I do want to clarify, though, that in neither of the situations was it 10 years that went by.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
You did refer to
I'm not that much of an angel. No, because I mentioned that my friend knew from a decade and a half ago that I had wanted to write a book, but that's not how long it had been since we chatted. So to be fair, I'm not that angelic.
So the question really then is drift. Well, the one of the points we're trying to make is that drift will happen. Friendships, I think we talked about that in the last episode, will ebb and flow and come and go, that kind of thing, and be open to it. And people get busy and you can't do things the way you did it before you were, involved in all the things we're in now. But there's some drifts that I don't want to resurrect. I'm just kind of going, yeah, you're draining my resources. You're not contributing anything to my mental, physical, whatever well-being, because we're women who do not confront.
No.
We let drift happen.
Yeah.
And there are some people who they just drifted out of my life, and I have no intentions of reconnecting. So it's not like we had a fight. It's not like there was anything, but it's just like I'm in a different headspace now,
Yeah.
and I don't know. What did we say? Was it the last episode? We said some friends don't travel.
Yeah. Some friends don't travel.
Yeah, so sometimes drift could happen because they can't come with you to where you are now,
Yeah.
or you can't go with them to where they are.
For sure. Yeah.
So what do we do when we see drift happening in our friendships? Before it gets to be too much, is there something we could do to retain our friendships?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's a little bit of a tangent from, the drift that happens intentionally, right? That's a drift away from that drift.
Some people, let them go, let them drift away, float away from you. We are established on that. Let them just picture their lantern on the sea, and their light is getting dimmer and dimmer as they fade away to other shores. Oh, I love that imagery. Anyway, so they're gone, and you're on the shore waving them goodbye. No hard feelings, right? And there's the one who's like, no, don't drift away from me. Come back. So once we want to call back or halt before they completely go out of sight, what can we do to halt that drift?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is to chat with that. So it's funny because this almost makes me think like, what if the other person is intentionally drifting and you're trying to hold on, right?
I'm trying to send a buoy. Throw out a buoy.
And they're like, no, my light is getting dimmer. Yeah, so I mean that's one scenario, and I mean I guess at the core of this,
what if that's the case? Like, how would you know? When did you know that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. So, yeah, I think that that's a really good question, and I don't know if there's an easy answer for it because us as women, we can be so avoidant, and I'm speaking for myself also within that, and I also know other women that are avoidant, and so it's like you can have a talk with that person and they'll reassure you like 10 times. And then they'll continue the drift. There's no problem. They're not gonna. Okay. So here's how you know. Okay. I'm glad we're on this topic. I'm glad we're thinking about this because I think I might have come upon the answer. Okay. So the way that you know is when you've had issues with this person in the past, that maybe they've addressed with you, maybe you've had conflict, did you, if nothing really, really changed or got resolved from that, then it's possible that this person is drifting from you because they're not going to address these things again.
And they're not invested in fixing.
Well, because maybe at some point they were, but then, so maybe something to reflect on is, I mean, the first thing you should always do is talk to your friend. But if you've talked to your friend a number of times and they always reassure you, everything's fine, I just don't ever call you.
But everything is fine.
So then you can
priority, but everything is fine.
So then you can reflect on, okay, have there been issues or conflicts in the past that, that this person has brought to my attention? And when I reflect on whether or not anything really changed from that, could their grievances have continued? And then now they're not addressing them with me.
Mm-hmm. But I'm also thinking sometimes drift might just happen because it's me. Mm-hmm. It's not the other person. They're going about their life the way they've always done.
Yeah.
but I don't get any satisfaction from that friendship, then how do you tell that to somebody?
Yeah.
Like, you're not my type anymore. Like it feels to me it would be cruel to say something like that to someone who used to be a friend. So then we yeah. How would you say that to someone?
Well, let me just say that it's like, it's so easy for us to say, wow, no, it would be cruel to be honest in that case. It's much less cruel to keep this person thinking that they're crazy. And no, honesty, that's cruel.
So tell me, walk me through the conversation you would have with the person to say.
Yeah, see,
we have nothing in common anymore. I have moved on.
I can't say that I've had this conversation, but I'm also not going to pretend that that's because I'm being kind. It's 100% because I would have a really hard time saying that to someone, right?
All right. So the bottom line is that sometimes the drifts that happen in our relations, in our friendships, or girl friendships, could be because we've changed and the person in our mind is no longer feeding us, so to speak, because we're creatures. We want to be fed and respected and whatever, or whatever the person has to offer is no longer what we need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that could happen where the person feels that way about you or you feel that way about somebody else. It's going to happen.
Yes.
So
yeah, people change. We change.
So I'm thinking if there's somebody who's been in my life and they've been an integral part of my life, and it feels like we're drifting apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if it's not my girlfriend, it's like Jessica, my daughter, and I'm going, hey Jess, we haven't spoken for a while. Now it's every time I message Jess. She says, "Oh, hi, Mom. Well, sorry, I will get back to you soon." Mm-hmm. And she never does. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking we have a relationship issue. Mm-hmm. Now, based on history, I would be popping up at her door and I'd be going, "What's going on? Mm-hmm. Why are you withdrawing?"
Yeah.
Right? And I would say for most of my current inner circle female friendships, I will probably show up at their door and go, "What's going on? You're ignoring me. Did I do something? What happened?" So I try to work it out. If you were like the next level circle out and you start the drift, and I'm going, I don't know that I would chase after you. Mm-hmm. I don't know, because it's just like I've got enough. Yeah. But if I had nobody, I might be chasing people who probably are not good for me. Let them go. Go find a new friend.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think we have different kind of thought processes or criteria when it comes to making that decision. Like, do I let this person go? And I think sometimes it depends on the season in your life. Right? If you have kind of more of a peripheral friend who's drifting a little bit and you're in a season of life where you're focused on other things, you might not make that reach out, even if that person, is someone whose company you enjoy, like you have no issues, you enjoy talking to them, but maybe you wouldn't go so far out of your way just because of, just how things are for you at that moment.
And even as you're speaking, Emilia, I mean, somewhere in the book and in a previous episode, we talked about friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for life.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking when we're talking about the drift, it could be somebody who was just in our life for a season.
Yep, for sure.
And they were meant to be in, serve their time.
Yeah.
And flow out. And I don't know that you know which ones those are until it happens. But when they are gone from your life, I'm thinking you're not feeling a lack.
Yeah.
It's like, well, at this period in time, whether we worked together or we did projects together or we whatever, we connected, and that was meant to be a season. So, for example, in our case, I mean, it's the female friendship guide that brought us together.
Yeah.
We don't have history beyond that. So, are we friends for life? No, maybe not.
Interesting
but we
question.
Don't know.
Yeah,
we
we
don't
don't
know,
know.
right? So after we've written the book, we've done the podcast, it's possible, because you're about to enter another phase of your life, we won't have time to reconnect quite the same way. And so I would have to be intentional, because you're not part of my everyday inner circle, to say, oh, I wonder how Emilia is doing. Right? Because it's not like we have a history of brunches in the morning and going on vacation together. It was a project that brought us together and morphed into a friendship. And when the project is over, if that's what was keeping us in close proximity, then we have to then make a decision. How intentional are we going to be to keep it going? And
So interesting
what
is,
what if you want to drift and I want to stay?
You know? Well, it's so funny because I hadn't considered this at all. Has not even crossed my mind once.
She looks emotional.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't an easy conversation you're having with me right now, Yvonne.
But that could be the friends who, there are people in our lives that come in for a particular period of time, and you have great time together. And then the project is over, life takes them in a different direction. It was a good season.
yeah.
So when we talk about the drift, then maybe these are the people we thought would be lifers. But I don't know if when our friendship starts, we know who are going to be lifers or not. It's just
Probably
some
don't.
people just manage to weather the distance.
Yeah, probably don't. It's so interesting that you bring this up, because I've even felt sometimes with my clients, right, that a friendship forms, like this kind of appreciation for each other forms. And then, when you have that kind of client coach relationship, you feel like, okay, well, when this time comes to an end, like whatever time we agreed upon, you should kind of let it go, right? Because it was in that capacity, but it's not always easy, right? It's not always easy.
And some relationships just don't transition. You may have, I have great clients, we have like a meeting of the mind, we work well together, but we have nothing other than that transactional relationship that brought us in that space after that.
Yeah.
So they go and live their best life, and then I have to say, okay, was I being my true, authentic self? Did I bring all of that to that relationship for however long it lasted? And, if I run into them somewhere else, I'll go, oh, right. And you'll connect again because there was some good synergy there.
For sure.
And there are other people who just, you see them. So I guess what I'm trying to say, you can say whatever you're trying to say, is that when I started the subject of drift, I was thinking more about the people who you just want to release. Release. And there's part of that. But maybe the better word we should have is ebb and flow. Yeah. And that's just how life is. Just be open to positive people and positive space, and let the ones flow out who are maybe either don't have to give or not giving you what you need. Just let them flow, and maybe cut each of us ourselves some slack. We're told perfect friends all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not always about me and what people need to do to please me.
Yeah.
What am I giving? So if you find drift happening in your friendships, I'd say reach out and check in with your friend. If you think you're the reason why the drift is happening, find that out too. Ask. And hopefully your friend will be honest enough with you, because you have not browbeaten them into doing things your own way in the past. That they will tell you. and you could be okay with whatever that truth is for them then.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to say about drift? I'm calling it ebb and flow. So we started drifting, but we're open to the possibility that you may flow back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny because, I started this episode by saying, actually, there's no one that I'm really drifting away from. More like right now, I'm kind of drifting back to some friends. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I do agree with the ebb and flow, but sometimes it is okay to also just drift away and to outgrow someone,
And just to be, transparent, I'm feeling a little bit of sadness because our podcast episodes are coming to an end. First Emilia and I were at the book project and then we had the podcast and we were in between. We did the launch and we did a couple of friendship circles. Who knows? A baby's on the way and I know how that changes things. So there's a little bit of sadness that this chapter is coming to an end, but it's okay. We can embrace the change, bittersweet, and see it as a transition to something that could be better. Or maybe this was the best this was going to get for this season, and we had a great time doing it. Because many times we don't celebrate in the happening, in the now. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I've been so focused on the new beginning that I haven't given a lot of thought to like endings that might come, and maybe not endings, but like, as you said, like a closing of a chapter. So yeah, no, that definitely makes me emotional to think about.
Right. And shoot, I thought we were done, but here we are about it. Because when we embrace new beginnings, it means other things may have to go on the back burner or may just have to go.
Yeah.
Because we have to focus on something that is more all-consuming.
Yeah.
For a time.
Which honestly makes me think that we should put something, set it in stone. So we should have like a new ritual, a thing. I'm like, okay, so obviously can't come to Canucks this coming January, but like maybe there's something else, Yvonne,
Yeah. So, but this is the intentionality we can do.
Yeah.
Like if you and your friends are going through, like you're at a transition point and there's nothing you can do about it. They're moving to a new country, they're having a baby, they're getting married and moving away, whatever it is. You can say, okay, this is important enough that we at least want to keep in touch, right? So you could make, like with you, I could say, okay, by about August, she probably will be able to remember what her name is. So that's when, I'd probably say, Jess, let's drive in the car and go, take Emilia out to lunch. Like, we can do some things intentional for the people we want to. They may not necessarily be in our lives to the same level of intensity, but we can keep the connections going.
Well, that makes me feel so much better.
I do have a little bit more freedom. You're just embarking on a chapter I have long closed.
Yeah.
I don't plan to go back. So it's
a big one. It's a big one.
Visits of commiseration.
I can't wait.
So for you out there, just friendships will ebb and flow, and drift sometimes happens. But be human, be open, and give your best in each season.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Girl Friendships Podcast with Yvonne and
Emilia. Thanks for listening. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Leave a comment, please, to let us know your thoughts.
And come back next time for another episode of Girl Friendships.